All right. So we got not yet. All right. So we got a little special show today. We're going to be talking about the football season, 2025 football season, our Super Bowl run. I got a couple coaches here with me. I have offensive line coach Steve Williams, and we got defensive coordinator Jordan Husero, remotely from South Carolina. I think we're going to go through the season, kind of go through a little bit of each game and kind of things that we prepared for, and kind of information that fans, parents, people really wouldn't know unless you kind of talk to us, and we had some behind the scenes stuff. So early on in the season, these guys can talk about it too. Going into the season through the summer practices, we knew we were going to have a solid team. We knew we had a chance to win the Super Bowl, and that was the goal since day one. We had our meetings with the players in the preseason, and the whole thing was making the team a priority and being here and being here for one another, for your teammates. And, if everybody made this a priority, the coaches, the players, the administration, we know Jamie definitely, knew we had a chance to win a Super Bowl this year, and he was definitely all over us too, making sure we were at our best every practice as well. So thanks for coming on, guys. So Jordan was a first year. Both these coaches actually were first year in their overall titles. Steve took over as the offensive line coach this year, and Jordan as defensive coordinator. And being able to put everything together with new coordinators, new position coaches. Joe Fazzaro also stepping into running backs coach and special teams coordinator, to be able to put it together and still win a Super Bowl. Because I felt sometimes when I was a younger coordinator on some pretty good teams that if I knew what I knew now, and that we could have won a championship. So it kind of makes me, feel, that's how much experience goes for you and kind of makes you a different coach. But Jordan, coming into this season as defensive coordinator, was it everything that you thought, or was it a lot of, did you learn along the way? What are some things that you thought would happen that didn't?
Yeah. I think really coming into this, and so I was co-defensive coordinator with Mike Inturi, and him and I met sort of before the season, and had some conversations about what each other's strengths were and weaknesses and all that. We felt pretty comfortable together taking on the role of co-defensive coordinator, especially with all his experience at University of New Haven and all, and previous to that, all his football and coaching experience. And getting into the season, we understood sort of the at a base level the X's and O's of it, and what we were trying to accomplish as a defense and as a team. But as the season went on, you start to there's definitely some learnings that happened, and one of the big things is process. A lot of people see what happens on Fridays, see the records in the journal or wherever, and they have some conceptions about teams and things like that, and what we're doing, and I'm sure we'll go into it at some point, the full sort of what a week looks like and all that kind of stuff. But it's a really long process. So that starts on Saturday when we get film from the opponent, and then goes all the way to Friday or Saturday if we have a game on Saturday. And you kind of go into it with this idea of how you're going to approach that week. Going into the season, I had this idea of how I was going to approach each week, and throughout the season, it changed substantially. And I think by the end of the season, the process started to get easier. There's a lot of we talked about. I know I've heard you guys talk about Huddle on here a lot. Huddle is such an incredible tool for film, and for us to be able to go through data, and what is really valuable about that is I can have sheet after sheet of data of 3rd and 10, and on this hash or that hash or this time of the game, what are the tendencies of the other team? Being able to use that and learn how to use that was sort of the biggest thing for me. And then the other big thing that I learned throughout the season is just how to use the players' strengths to the advantage of the defense, and when you needed to sort of push and pull in certain ways. But yeah, those are the two big things that I learned this year.
Yeah, and then offensive line and linebackers are such a, we have certain positions where we have multiple coaches at, especially offensive line. Offensively, it's probably the most important, definitely the most important position there is. And linebackers as well. So previously, the last few years, Steve's been, helping with linebackers. He's been a linebacker and offensive line coach. This was the first year that he was in charge of both on his own. If you want to kind of go into your, preparation through the year and kind of what you thought, coming in and just how it went.
Well, going into the season, when Ronnie told me that, or asked me if I wanted the job, I said yeah. If he could could find somebody who was qualified, that I would be happy to coach alongside him. But I took everything I learned from the last 5 years from Coach Barros and Coach Miranda, and took the best of what they brought in and brought it to this. Biggest part of this was finding guys. Yeah. I mean, we had 2 returning starters and just needed bodies. Last year, 2 years ago, I think we played 6 kids totally for the 5 spots on the offensive line. This year, I think it was 13 kids took a meaningful snap on offense somewhere, and it was finding those bodies, getting those kids to buy in, and had a lot of help. Coach Intreri and Coach Vuno, along with Ronnie, really telling me what he wants out of his guys, very specific game plan. And even Coach Usuro, with some of these new guys coming in, really pushing to get them involved. We might have had different time frames for them, but it's guys like that going, get these guys ready is the end result, because the 5 that were on the field to start the season were not the 5 that were on the field to end the season. And all 12, 13 of them played an integral part in this happening.
Yeah, throughout the summer, early in the summer especially, I was kind of taking over the offensive line for a little while. So in the off season, going to coaching clinics and just doing some research on offensive line and just preparing in case I had to be the offensive line coach. But as offensive coordinator and head coach, the goal is, as a head coach, to be able to coach every single position. So it was something I really liked anyway. I knew scheme very well, blocking schemes, but the little integral, footwork and hand placement and all that within the offensive line, definitely, made me a better coach throughout the season. Thankfully, Steve took over, and we also hired Nunzio Vuno, who is a '92, I think, alum of Westerly. That also helped with the offensive line, and Coach Intreri did worked with the tight ends. We're kind of gonna go through the schedule and kind of each game quickly and kind of some key points. Some games we might talk about a little more, but going through the schedule, our first game up in Scituate, Mass, where they were defending champions of Division IV Massachusetts. In Massachusetts, it's all about enrollment. So even though Scituate definitely could hang with a lot of the Massachusetts Division I teams, they would be one of the better Division I teams also in Rhode Island. They're Division IV because of their enrollment. They're a little bigger than us. They have about 700 students. And we were looking for a game to fill week 2. Nothing personal against Charahoe, but we dropped them because of the point system. And we beat them in previous years with this point system, and our points actually went down. So we wanted to challenge ourselves and try to really get some big points early in the season, because if we were to win that Scituate game, it would be equivalent to winning about three Division II games, which puts you in like the driver's seat right away off the season. But that Scituate game, we weren't sure what we were getting into. They were undefeated the year before. They were one of a few teams that had openings for during the season. We ended up playing them the first week, where most Rhode Island teams were playing the injury fund games. But going into that game, right off the bat, we gave up a kickoff return for a touchdown. And, I'm thinking to myself, what did we get into? Because I had no idea going into this game how good this team could have been and what they were. I didn't know if we were going to beat them. I didn't know if we were going to lose by 40 points, because I just know they were undefeated. They were state champions, and they had one of the best running backs in the state. And I think it was Foley's his last name. It might be Mason Foley.
Grayson Foley.
Grayson Foley. But we came back right away with a kick return of ourselves. Jake Karen returned a the kickoff. And then it was back and forth. Defensively, we knew that Grayson Foley was a great running back, and he obviously was a big part of their offensive production that game. But we didn't know a ton about him. But Jordan, if you want to go through like what it is to kind of try to stop a player like that and kind of throughout that game real quick, because it's a tough one because we didn't really know what our identity yet, especially offensively. I can go in a minute, but it was kind of seeing what we had, and that's why we just weren't sure. We knew we were a good team, but could we stack up against one of Massachusetts' best? We weren't sure, and it turned out that we definitely had our opportunities to win. We ended up losing 33-29, but it felt like a playoff game right off the bat, back and forth, and an amazing atmosphere there, kind of like it is here on Friday nights. But go ahead, Jordan.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing with a team like that is they also have a quarterback that can throw the ball in a great passing game. I think he threw for, I think it was somewhere around 250 yards as well. The issue with that game is we just couldn't get off the field when we needed to. I think later on I think we played Foley pretty well, downs one and two, but we got to, third downs and just couldn't stop. A back like that, you got to have downhill force and, secondary that's willing to come down and tackle, and again, like early in the season, it's difficult, when we're working with such a small roster. Not only are we trying to figure it out throughout that season, but we've always got new guys added to the mix, especially early in the season that we're trying to figure out. So, it was one of those games. We played a lot of our base defense. Early in the season, you don't have as much time to install, some of the other defenses. So, I think we played well. We just couldn't get off the field when we needed to.
That's
a big thing.
Offensively too, because I remember, there was third downs where we couldn't get off the field on defense, but there was some big third downs offensively, especially inside the red zone that I wish I could have back because, we stalled a couple times and, if I could do anything different in that game, I would run the ball a little more because we weren't sure what kind of running game we would have. We weren't even, 100% on a running back yet. We were kind of going back and forth with Sam Brimlow and Calvin Hill because I really loved Calvin Hill early in the season where he played previously at tight end. Being a pass team first, in our offense, a tight end's a huge position. So, offensively, our identity wasn't really sure yet. We actually ran the ball a lot better later in the season. There was times, 3rd and 1. I know Steve here wanted me to run, and I wasn't running the ball. We were throwing, and
offensive line.
Yeah, we had a short third down and early in the game that we ended up throwing the ball, and it was a mistake on my part. So we learned a lot about ourselves, and and I still remember Steve saying that we can run the ball, and kind of stayed with me the rest of the season there. So.
Well, one, to reiterate on Jordan's statement on defense, the year before we had Calvin Hill and Sam Brimlow at linebackers, both coming back, potential all-state caliber players. But with a small roster, Calvin made an adjustment to defensive line, which anybody who watched the games saw how effective that was. I mean, he was a first-team all-state defensive end this year, which meant we had to find a new linebacker. And we ended up finding one in Tristan Johnstone, but first game ever playing football, trial by fire. It's really tough. He either had a bad case of the nerves or the fastest case of the flu I've ever seen, because Tristan spent a lot of times on the sidelines because of the nerves, which meant we had to play guys even go deeper into the roster. And it showed. We had some guys that this year probably going to be ready to play some football, but maybe first week last year weren't quite ready. But that's what happens when you have such a small roster. Offensively, we had 2 returning starters on the offensive line. Everybody else, we had a sophomore, a first-year senior.
When did we move Ian there? Was it before the first game?
Yeah, Ian went that.
No, he was. I thought he was after Portsmouth.
It might have been.
Ian started Portsmouth. Ian started East Providence. I think Ian was off the rip.
Okay, check, yeah.
I think Ian
It might
was
have
off
been
the
later.
rip.
Yeah, I have no idea.
But
I have to go
that's
back.
another
But
thing.
That's what we did, yeah.
Credit to Ian. Ian was starting on defense. He was a tight end. He was third on the depth chart at tight end, and coaches went to him, "Hey, Ian, how about," and before you could even finish the sentence, he's like, "Yeah." And he went and, you know,
Our offensive line is filled with
a lot of tight ends,
ends.
a lot of third string tight ends.
But yeah, going through that game, we understood that we could play with, some of the best teams, in Massachusetts. Because I watched their Super Bowl. They won the state championship again this year. And I watched their game against Tewksbury. And, watching that game, they looked really good. Both teams looked really good. And thinking to myself, we actually hung right with this team, and that we had our opportunities to win, really shows that, we have a great program. And after this first game, we kind of knew that, all right, we have a team here, and we can go as far as, we're going to take ourselves. And we always say, especially with our small roster, that if we stay healthy, we have a great chance of winning it. The problem is we didn't stay healthy, and we'll get to that in a couple games here where we started losing some players, and we really had to start shuffling around. It's hard enough when we only have 40 kids to start the season trying to move people around, but when you start losing some starters to injury, you're trying to get your best 11 out there, and moving kids around is where it becomes a challenge. But after that first game, we moved on to our first home game of the season against Ram, Connecticut. The Alliance, Connecticut has this thing called the Alliance, where they schedule games on out of conference games for you, and you don't have to be part of Connecticut to be a part of it. And we joined it last year, and we had an opening on week 2, and they scheduled us with Ram, and they also had a new coach this year, and they were running the double wing. And the funny thing was, when I was talking to Jordan, he's printing up the some stuff online from their coach, and I was like, "Is this the calendar that I know from online stuff and just reading about?" Because we ran the double wing in Westerly. We were mostly a wing T team, but we ran the double wing for 1 year, especially. And then when I was the freshman coach for that year with me and Coach Gebb, and we were very actually good at it. But when looking stuff up, his name came across. So a very well-known coach in the double wing world, but you also have to have some players to be successful too. And we knew right away that they didn't really have the players to keep up with us. Their defense was a straight-up man defense, playing an old bear front. But against a modern spread offense, that can be a little tricky if you don't have the athletes to stay with the receivers. And we had 4 very good receivers, probably 5 actually, and that the man cover just wasn't happening for him, because we ran the ball very well. But I remember a couple plays where Danny would just run right by the defender, and it was a nice easy pitch and catch for Landon and Danny. But yeah, defensively though, early on they were running that wedge right there, and they got a couple big runs on us, 10 yards here, 15 yards here. So it looked like, all right, maybe they're going to move the ball a little bit, but. Tell us, a little difference with the double wing there. It's something totally different than what we're normally preparing for. Most teams run similar, spread offenses for the most part. Maybe a little more heavier run, maybe a little more heavier pass, but double wing's definitely something different to prepare for. So you want to bring us through what you did that week, Jordan?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, our base defense has a lot of checks based on what they're in, especially from a coverage standpoint. When they're compact like that, it allows us to be more compact, get more guys in the box. To be honest, if you're running the double wing or a lot of misdirection, you have to be able to protect the football. You have to be able to, they had some small guys on the line, and so. I mean, realistically, our base defense allowed us to pack things in. I think the guys were caught off guard on the first couple plays, but then settled in, and we just, we had the guys too to just outman them. So, yeah, and then with our offense, just speaking to that for a sec, we saw them on film in a lot of cover zero, and that's for anyone who doesn't know, it's just basically man to man underneath and no help over the top. And in modern day football, that's you can have a mediocre receiver that you got 5 guys, one of them beats their guy, and you have a wide open with no help over the top. Typically, it's like in goal line or all out blitz or something like that. But to run it as your base defense, and we saw it on film, I couldn't believe that they were actually going to run that against us, and then they show up and run it against us, and we knew it was going to be a pretty quick day. So
Yeah, it was halftime. It was 54-0, and their coach, kept asking the refs to come over and see if they could keep shortening the game up. Eventually, it got to the fourth quarter was an 8-minute running quarter. The third quarter was a 10-minute running quarter, and it went really fast. And we got really hot for the next couple weeks. We brought that into East Providence, and it was probably the best first quarter that I've ever been a part of. You could probably argue it's one of the best first quarters in a football game. You could see we scored 41 first quarter points against East Providence, up in East Providence. And one of the touchdowns we gave up was a kick return where it was an obvious hold. Like their guy was holding every play. I remember Steve saying, yeah, if they were going to return one every 4 kicks, it's worth it to get a holding call every now and then. But yeah, we came out hot really against them, and everything was clicking, and it really, from that Ram, even though we lost in Scituate, it gave us confidence. Obviously, being Ram, we knew they weren't the greatest opponent, but we took care of business, exactly what we needed to do. East Providence, who was, Providence Journal picked as a possible Super Bowl matchup with us, it was just a remarkable performance, by us, and another unconventional offense in the triple option that they ran. Some pretty much an old school flex bone, similar, pretty much the exact same offense that they've been running, since Sandy Gorham was there. The head coach at Barrington was the East Providence coach for a long time, running wishbone option and flexbone option, and that's pretty much what they did. And they had some great athletes. I mean, their quarterback is excellent, and one of their running backs or wide receivers is also very good. But it was one of our best games that we probably played all season. So you want to go, Steve, about the really offensively, we pretty much could do whatever we wanted.
Yeah, that was the first game where, for the offensive line, we had everything back. We had lost a young man for the first couple of weeks to an injury.
Yeah, Ryder came back.
Ryder was coming back, so it got to the point where I'm looking at these guys going, I got 6 starters. And the previous week, I can't remember the exact details around it, but we had Alex actually started the Ram game for us. Alex Myers, a freshman, who was another one in that group that stepped in, who, as you'll hear later, played a big role in the end of our season. But the Ram game showed Alex could play. Kids like Evan Baxter and A.J. Kreider were taking meaningful snaps for us to increase. But that East Providence game, it was really hard to critique because it seemed everything went right.
We forced a lot of turnovers that game, didn't we? I feel like we kept getting the ball back for us.
Yeah, so that game, traditionally in the triple option, a lot of times you'll take your defensive end and spill them down to the fullback, secure the easy run up the middle, and then have secondary or linebackers fill to the quarterback to the pitch. Mike and I were talking earlier in the week, and we saw that their athlete was their quarterback and their guy was their quarterback, and so we decided that let's take the decision maker out of the game. Our strength on our, and intentionally our strength on our defense was our defensive line. You'll note that, Caleb the year before was a safety. Going into this year, we moved him to end because we wanted, we needed our athletes, strong athletes on the line, especially in high school football, securing the line of scrimmage. There's a lot of edge rush and all that where you need some good ends. And so knowing that Caleb and Calvin were 2 kind of strongest players on defense, we wanted them to impact the game in the biggest way possible. And so we decided that we were going to have them, just take out the quarterback, basically. Your assignment is the quarterback. And it worked out. So he's a decision maker. Once we started getting some hits on him, he was unsure of what you add an element of uncertainty for him, add a gray area to if you should hand it off, pull it, pitch it, etc. and it worked out in our favor. So we
I
started
was a
to see
little
some
nervous, to be
turnovers.
honest. I was a little nervous early in the week just because it was definitely the opposite of what we normally were doing against option teams. We played Barrington a couple times with the option. And going back to when Dwayne Miranda was the head coach and defensive coordinator, when we played option team, we ran like a 4-3 with two safeties and kind of rotated to the motion. And then when I was a defensive coordinator with Stanley Dunbar, we kind of did more of a 4-4 look where we manned up on the corners, but we had our ends going for the dive, and the inside play side backer would be on the QB, and it was kind of hit or miss. We had some great success a couple times. We had Greg Gorman at defensive end one of those years doing a hell of a job on the running back, but the quarterback was actually the Portsmouth quarterback that year. I remember for one of those times gave us some problems. So, I was a little nervous, but then after the first couple of plays, I'm like, all right, this is doing really well. So, mixing up, what we've done in the past, and it proved to be a great, scheme. So, something like that with defensive scheme against an option attack, we really did a great job at taking out their best player, and we were extremely efficient that game offensively. Landon was 7 for 9 with 3 touchdown passes. Calvin had 6 carries and 3 touchdowns rushing. Caleb had 2 touchdowns receiving on 4 receptions. So we didn't have the ball very much when we did. We scored very quickly, and we were on fire that game. And then it probably might have been you don't want to be too high when we're winning, and we don't want to be too low when you're losing. But our next game was our first kind of real test against Division One. We're not really a real test because Scituate was a great team as well. But Portsmouth and Rhode Island, Division One team with about 25 seniors, and they took it to us. 49-12. We definitely were not obviously expecting a loss like that. And from an offensive standpoint, what I came out of it was our pass protection had issues against quick, fast, athletic defensive ends. Where we didn't really kind of prepare our offensive line. I didn't prepare them enough for that, and we didn't really have enough answers. Because early in the season, we actually sent out 5 receivers a lot more than we did later in the season. I kept in the running back a lot more, after the Portsmouth game. But what we learned from the Portsmouth game was every week from then on during our offensive practice, we had a blitz pickup session, and making sure that everything was taken care of, and because that was the one issue that we would have, and it seemed like that was a weakness. If we had quick guys on the edge against us, they were giving us problems with some edge rushing, and if they were athletic, which they definitely were. Portsmouth was one of the most athletic teams we played all season, and things kind of spiraled downhill for us in that game. Early in I think it was one of the first plays from scrimmage, they scored a touchdown, and on a pass play, and it kind of just steamrolled from there, and that's when our injuries started happening as well. Definitely a bad game for us, but overall, looking back, losing a game like that, I think actually turned us into a better team, and we learned from our mistakes. And me as a coach, whether it's baseball, football, one thing that I think I do a good job as is learning from mistakes. I might have to see something not work to kind of to understand, all right, this isn't working, I need to change it. But one thing we do as a staff here is really kind of make up for and correct our mistakes. And if you want to talk about that, that was probably our worst game offensively.
Yeah, in warm-ups even, it felt different. And that's probably coming off 2 absolute blowouts. I mean, as Ram was what it was, but East Providence, as Ronnie said, was a potential Super Bowl matchup. So when you're in high school, I mean, even as coaches, you start maybe inflating your idea of what you are as a team. And then we come out, Portsmouth, not going to put this on, we played bad, or they were awesome. They were senior loaded, they knew what they were doing, and they were very aggressive. Scituate, when we played them, first game, not really knowing the team, probably played a lot more base. Ram and East Providence, we did whatever we wanted to do. Portsmouth came out and put pressure on us. And what was it? First quarter, we lost our starting center, who was a tremendous player. We had to make adjustments. That adjustment was moving a guard to center who had never played center before, because we had another Ryder went to guard,
Yeah.
and they took advantage of our inexperience, and it really showed. And after that game, my goal was to get these kids as prepared for that. And I also, as Ronnie said, I think it was a tremendous awakening for these kids that you're going to play some good teams and you're going to have to play really good ball to beat them.
Yeah, and in our schedule, the way we schedule games too, we have 4, Division II conference games, and everything else is out of conference against tough teams. And it's kind of a little balance, because with a small roster, the tougher teams you play, there's going to be more battles. It's going to be more physical. There's more of a chance of injuries, and we keep saying our goal is to stay healthy. And but we also want to be competitive and play some of these best teams, no matter what state we're in. Whether it's playing a Massachusetts team, we're playing a New Hampshire team this year. We really want to challenge ourselves, and Portsmouth. It was probably one of their better years they've had in a while. I think they really could have gone far in the playoffs. They got upset by Cranston West in the semifinals in the Division I playoffs. But they were an excellent team. They had a couple of the best. They had a great running back, a great quarterback. When you have athletes that are athletic, you're going to give teams problems. And I can't remember. I know the offense didn't do too well that game, and I know we kind of didn't put our defense in great positions. I don't really remember too much about it, other than the thing that stands in my mind is just having to fix the pass protection. Anything defensively you took from it that we kind of learned from?
Yeah, I think it's Steve's point. It was just kind of from the start, from pregame, the energy. When we play a one gap defense, which means everybody has a responsibility. And if you have hesitancies, then they can you got to have force, and you got to have you got to fill your holes, and part of the issue too is, again, small roster. We're going to talk about this a lot, obviously, but small roster. And so when you have an injury on offense, typically you have an injury on defense as well. And so, it's a guy that plays two ways. I think we had 14, 15 guys that were in our sort of core rotation on offense and defense. And so, with Jack going down on offense also meant that our interior defense was impacted by that. So it's sort of just one of those games where, you got to have energy, and then it starts to spiral. And, I know offensively they did a good job of mixing up pressure. And I think they had some auto pressures that were in there based on, how we lined up. They were sending that. I remember they sent, was it I don't think it was number 4, the Sanderson
4 and
kid.
1.
Yeah, they were sending him off that edge, and he was getting some serious pressure on us. So, but yeah, one of those games you kind of want to forget about and leave in the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
Take your lessons from it, and then leave it behind.
In the end, it helped us more.
Yeah, no, it definitely helped us.
For sure.
I always joked around too, because Jamie was very mad, and you know what I mean. So I was like, all right, we gotta this. We had a bad game. Teams have bad games. Good teams every once in a while do get blown out.
I feel like Portsmouth and Stonington hit Jamie differently.
Yeah, but it definitely helped us in the long run. We'll breeze over a couple of these next games to get to the playoffs, but we had Woonsocket next at home, and we knew coming off that loss we had to put something together. And funny thing with Woonsocket, they had their longtime assistant coach became the head coach this past year at the All Division Awards kind of voting meeting. I talked to him after briefly. And he kind of joked around saying he thought that we weren't going to be a physical team because we throw a lot. We're a spread team. But he probably didn't know. I was a running back. So I coach in the single wing. You got to be physical, and I try to keep that physical mentality. Same thing with Steve as the offensive line coach. That we have to be a physical team. We're not going to be this spread team that doesn't like to get touched, that doesn't like to get hit. We need to be a tough physical team that just happens to throw more than they run. So I'm kind of glad that that was kind of like a compliment to us that we're a physical, tough team, and and that goes to the coach, the offensive line coach with Steve here, and Nunzio, and then defensively, obviously, we're definitely not even close to being a pushover. With Mike being one of the, he's got to be one of the best defensive line coaches in the state. He's excellent, and gets his players ready. And we definitely came back and won that game 48-7. We had a lot of our wins. A lot of our games, our wins early on were all blowouts. We were in running clocks toward the end. So a lot of these scores actually could have been even worse than what they actually were. And then we had a big Division I matchup with Central. It was always a tough game, especially playing up there. And there was a field change. We played at Classical High School, and that's really compact in there. And I think it plays toward Central style. You never know, like they could show up with everybody and everybody there, and the place is packed, and they're like right on top of the field because it's so close. A funny story about the Central game was that a lot of teams came and scouted us that game because when we're watching our own game film, you can see like the Stonington Bears jackets, and then you can see the Barville Broncos jackets, and for a team scouting us, that's probably not the game they wanted to see because Central, one of the better Division I teams, their record doesn't always show it. They were competitive every game. They ended up winning the Consolation Division I Super Bowl. But it was definitely a tough game. We ended up winning 13-14, but it wasn't the easiest game in the world. They have great athletes, and I had a little problem with the officiating that game. And from that point on, I was more calm. I tried to be calm throughout the season because it was a little too much, and that's not the kind of way I want to be, especially for that much. If there's a call here and there, I'm going to get on somebody, but it was just call after call, and that's not the way. My head was out of the game for a little while. And we finally kind of got back into it and pulled away at the end there, 30-14, which is a great win for us and a great confidence booster, beating a Division I team like that. So, what did you do throughout the week trying to prepare for those receivers? Because they had what was it?
Sunny Way, yeah.
Sunny, yeah.
Sunny Way, who actually just transferred out. Central, like you said, has a lot of athletes. They're also big and strong up front. The biggest thing that came from this game for me was this was the first game that we faced adversity and fought through it, right? We had a lot of blowouts, sort of both ways. The Situate game, didn't go the right way, but, this game was a physical game, and our guys stepped up to it. It was one of those games. I think this was like, I know we turned around the Portsmouth game into Woonsocket, and it blew out Woonsocket, but I think this is like the real turnaround game for the season, I think, in my mind, and where we kind of had some adversity, went up against it and came out the other side. So
yeah, and this is where some of our new players like Tristan Johnstone started to kind of get comfortable and hit their stride. Colby Champlin as well. I've said it before on here. Colby and Tristan, we have so many players on this team this year where if we said, all right, they got hurt or if they didn't come out to play, because Colby and Tristan played, they were the first year, both of them played football for the first time in high school in their careers. And if they didn't come out, who knows? I don't think we could have won a Super Bowl. And you could say that about a lot of players. If they got injured, we probably weren't winning. And those two coming out for football, pretty much, thinking back and going over this, like really completed our team and kind of saved the season by them playing. And the farther the season went along, the better they got. Because once we get into the West Warwick playoff game in a minute, running a 5-1 pretty much with Tristan as our only linebacker, being a brand new linebacker, and him being able to get the job done with 2 interceptions that game. Amazing job that he did throughout the season, and Colby to get into that situation where they're actually helping us now, and 2 of the better players on our team, and it really showed.
To reiterate what Jordan just said on that, in the Portsmouth game, we got hit in the mouth right away, and it just spiraled out of control. You guys remember the Central game. It started the same way. Nothing was going our way. We're getting offsides penalties and all this. We're going backwards rather than forwards. And these kids fought back. And it's easy to keep pushing when you're playing with a lead. It's different when you're getting hit in the mouth and nothing's working and battle through adversity. And this was the game. Portsmouth, I think, had a big effect on this year. Central was a massive game, and one you're going to talk about later that I think really pushed these kids to do what they did.
Yeah, and and what we're also getting at, Jack was our starting center, and it was hard to like envision our offense actually working well, without him in there. And now that's 2 games in a row, and when Socket a blowout, and then against a very good Central team, winning with Damon and Alex pretty much. I think it was still Damon, right, for the most part, but Alex was getting in there a little bit.
Losing Jack actually meant we lost Damon too, because Damon was an all-division caliber guard, and Damon had to go to center because we were trying Alex, but he's a freshman. He was undersized, and I think it was the Central game where we tried to use, and they were just picking him up and throwing him. And Alex, if it's a finesse defensive line or a smaller defensive line, his footsteps, his work ethic, everything is great, but you can't teach size. And it's tough to ask a freshman to come in and be varsity caliber size. Hopefully something we're able to progress with. So Damon did an admirable job there, but it also took away one of our best guards.
Yeah, and then, a great win, and we ended up scoring late again to go up by 2 scores in that game, and, keep getting confidence throughout the season. We went to Moses Brown the following week, and we actually started off pretty slow. We were moving the ball offensively, but we had we would stall here and there, and the game was a little closer than it should have been early in that game, and we ended up winning 42-14. But they were in a similar situation with us. Their numbers at Moses Brown were pretty low. They only had, I think, 6 offensive linemen going into the game, and I know 1 or 2 got hurt. I remember at halftime or something, they're switching jersey numbers because they needed a lineman. Kind of, we bring extra lineman jersey too in case we have to move one of our tight ends or something to the line. Coming back and having a great second half. We played a tremendous second half that game. And we're starting to hit our stride here with kind of becoming an identity and kind of figuring out what we're doing, because this is the time in the season where we started to go with Calvin at running back almost exclusively. We still filtered in Sam a little bit, but he started to have a little bit of an injury that he was kind of.
Yeah, this is that window where we lost Marcus, Mike, and Sam all within a 2-week
so this is the
period.
game where our starting left tackle, Marcus Carreri, we lost in practice, and he was out for the season. During this Moses Brown game, we lost Sam Brimlow, our starting middle linebacker, and he would play a little tight end and running back for us, and he was out for the season. Who else we lose? Mike Jervis Sr.
Yeah, Mike Jervis was the first play of the game.
Yeah, first play of the game. So things, even though we're winning here, and we came back and had a great second half and ended up winning 42-14, morale-wise, losing all these players this week, we keep going back to it. We stay healthy, we got a great shot. Well, we're not healthy right now. And, getting a little nervous, as the coaches, I'm sure we were a little nervous. We don't want to show it to the players that, we could be in trouble here. But, guys stepped up all the time. And then with Mike McLeod came in a little bit, a linebacker, because Sam was out. Who else played some
big one that
linebacker?
game was Logan Uncree.
Logan Uncree came in.
Carter was still out with his
corner.
broken
That's
arm.
right.
So, like, a backup to the backup came in and did – he had one really good play. He broke up to their number 1 receiver, too, who ended up all-state, all-division.
Yep. Oh, yeah, he was very
So
good.
Logan came in and did a great job.
Yeah, and then going into the next game was Barville, another Division I team. But the thing with them though, their school size is very similar to us. A few years ago, they beat us in the quarterfinals of the playoffs. My first year as a head coach in 2023, and if we had won that game, we would have been bumped up to Division I. So, a small school like that, they probably, even though their record in their last, because the Interscholastic League does a whole formula with records, and it's barely, enrollment is a very little part of that formula. So Barville got moved up, and they had beaten us in some big games the past 3 or 4 years in the playoffs. Their head coach, Gennaro Ferraro, is a Westerly guy, and they've had a number the past few years, but this year we felt like we had a great shot, and we had some guys really step up in this game. One thing that comes to mind was Ian Morissette's. Barville was running a little option pitch there, and he pretty much picked off the I don't know, did a bounce once, but he pretty much picked off the option pass, the option pitch there, and ran it back for a touchdown, which was, I think 3-2-1 uses it as their opening sometimes. But defense was on a roll these last few games here throughout this season. Barville kind of hurt us the year before, scoring 30-something points. It was really tough stopping them with, Jelinas at quarterback. And, they had some couple new players, couple guys graduated for them. But, defensively, we were pretty much lights out that game and, kind of trying to carry this over into the Big West Warwick game that we had the week after.
Yeah, I think, you mentioned it. I mean, Ian had that big play. But on top of that, I mean, let me go backwards for a second. So Ian, coming into the season, we knew that he was the front runner to get the Wolf position, which is basically the outside linebacker to the overhang linebacker to the wider side of the field. We didn't really know what we were going to get out of him. And players that stepped up. I mean, we wouldn't have had the season we did if we didn't have him out there. Adding the physicality. We see in high school football, tendencies play a big part. And one of the things that you see a ton is outside sweep runs to the field are a big part of high school offenses. And so having that guy that's going to willing to come blow up that edge is crucial. And Ian did a great job of that. I mean, they do try to get their backs to the outside. They run some of that read option stuff, a little triple option sort of out of that. And, and it comes down to assignments. And so, our ends did a great job, Ian stepping up, and then safeties coming in and filling, the alley backs, backers in the fill, so this is just one of those games too that everybody understood their assignment and followed through and played physical. So that's a great. Sorry, I was just going to reiterate. That's a great coach team. Gennaro does a great job up there. They're undersized, undermanned, if you will, like you said, and so that was a good win.
Yeah, and we did so well that they didn't want to re-up our little rivalry. So we're not playing them in the regular season this year. They are back in Division II though, Burrillville, and expect them to obviously be a playoff team. I think they'll definitely be a Division II playoff team, and we might be able to see them there. Scheme-wise, though, defensively, we run a 4-2-5. We've been running that for about 10 years now. We were anybody that played under Coach Reed and Coach Morano and Terranova back in the day. We were a 5-3 team, which if you're playing a lot of these spread teams, the 5-3 kind of turns into a 3-3 stack kind of deal with the modern offenses. But with the 4-2-5 we run is very versatile, and we can, and Jordan said earlier, we can align to any single front. Against certain things, it might not be the best, and we might have some adjustments to it. But if anybody's going really fast, no huddle, we don't have time to do anything, we can align against anything and play defense with this with the 4-2-5. It's very, very versatile. Get your best athletes on the field. One of the biggest differences in our defense compared to 20 years ago in the 5-3 is the athleticism of our D line. We have Caleb Williams and Calvin Hill at defensive end, who are two of the better athletes on the team. Where if it was a 5-3, Calvin would probably be back playing his linebacker position. Caleb might be a stand-up defensive end, or he was a safety early on too. He could be the free safety in a 5-3. You don't know, because we had guys like him in the past, like Drew Turnbull, that was about his size. Nowhere near the athleticism, though. Sorry, Drew. And but we have our best athletes at defensive ends. We have them at our outside linebacker spot. Ian Morris said, a great lacrosse player that's also playing football. And then, obviously got to be athletic in our secondary. But getting the best 11 on the field is the goal of our defense. And then, we went into the next game. Yep, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that, like, to expand on the secondary there, like with the way that the 4-2-5 is built, it puts our safeties in run fits, which means they have a heavy run responsibility. Without the safeties, those edge rushes become really difficult to defend. And so having guys, like Danny Cummings in there, an athletic guy who, an athletic guy who's physical and strong and get downhill and make tackles, but also be able to play in this pass coverage in the secondary is crucial to the defense. And fortunately, we had that this year.
So Jordan, it looks like you're the only one on the screen right now. Hopefully they can hear us.
Great.
Oh, here we go. We got Ben in there. A few more minutes, Ben. We all right? We're almost to the playoffs here. So the West Warwick game, big loss at the end of the season, even though it didn't affect the standings. I think it was the first time in these last few weeks where our injuries kind of came back to bite us. We had some younger guys starting in there, but defensively, one thing so West Warwick runs like a kind of like the old Michigan State 4-3 match quarters, like press quarters defense. Sometimes they're press, sometimes they're playing 6 to 8 yards off. But what West Warwick did really well is they covered, and they were physical. And our regular drop back passing game wasn't as successful against West Warwick as some other teams because they were able to kind of stay with our guys more and cover. So a lot of other plays kind of came into play, especially in the playoff game in a minute here. But all I remember, they had a tough running game, West Warwick, and I remember offensively, I just felt like I couldn't get in a groove with the play calling, and we couldn't get into a rhythm. And losing the last regular season game like that, it's not something you want to do going into the playoffs, because you're going to play that team again. And after just losing to them, they're probably going to have mentally the upper hand. After beating us, we ended up playing them a couple weeks after, but. If you want to talk about the West Warwick, their running game, and kind of they're the team who knocked us out of the playoffs the year before in the semifinals. So definitely have a little history with them, and one of the tougher teams in Division II that we played all season. So
yeah, they're a super physical team. They always have big linemen, big strong athletic linemen, and we approach them with a base. With our base defense, and talk about injuries. I think this was the game Ian got hurt in this game, or was a carryover injury, whatever it was. And so you sort of look at like the importance of that force came to light that game, especially. And so they're coming at you with trying to throw numbers at you, and they had couple really good running backs. A physical running back that kind of we had a tough time taking down, and then the Andrew Chow kid is a very good running back. He was a junior this year, so he'll be back next year. It just came down to one of the things on defense is when you're getting hit in the chin, sometimes you got to be able to withstand it. And, I think that was, another one of those games. And we sort of had those resets throughout the season. Like you mentioned, it was one of those games that you got in the chin, and we sort of back down a little bit, and you see what happens. And, kind of one of those eye openers,
Yeah, it kind of seems like every few games, we need that little wake up call when we get into a groove.
That was the game where, watching the film, Jordan talked about how the strength of our defense was the defensive line and the defensive ends. That was probably collectively Caleb and Calvin's worst game of the year.
Yeah.
Watching film, I know Coach and Cherry called him out. I called him out. Caleb and I watched extra at home, and I'm like, dude, who are you?
Yeah. I remember our guys were, instead of trying to take on blocks and defeat blocks, they were kind of we were avoiding way too much,
trying to make special plays.
Yeah, and they kind of had their way. We had a real tough time consistently, stopping their run game. Kind of similar to early in the season where we'd get them on third down and then we couldn't get off the field. That was the problem the year before in the playoffs.
Yeah,
go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, and they have a very good tight end, very strong, especially in the run game. And they would throw that like tight end wing at us and down block on, Calvin and Caleb. And, just by alignment, we sort of got ourselves out of position at times. And so later in the game, we did make an adjustment to put a fifth defensive lineman down, which allowed those ends to get the leverage they needed, and things started to it wasn't perfect, but we started to see things turn around, and that sort of set the game plan for what we did 2 weeks later.
Yeah, because it was one of our poorer games that we played, and against a very solid team, and it was a good game, 27-20. I mean, we're not going to win every single game, and when you play bad against a good team, you're probably not going to win. So, we knew exactly, like, game planning offensively, especially being a pass. Obviously, we're looking for what front they run, what their coverage is. We see cover one sometimes, which is man free, which is a safety over the top with man underneath. We see a ton of cover four nowadays, though, but it could be. Are they pressed cover four? Are they playing like quarters cover four where they're all 7, 8, and the safeties are 10 to 12? And let's take advantage of what they're giving us. What West Warwick was very good at is actually playing that quarters, but also being able to cover shorter routes. So their cover, they were the best cover team we played, and we had to figure some different things out, ways to score. And we knew we were going to probably play them in the playoffs in a couple of weeks. So once again, we'd have to learn from our mistakes. And we went into the playoff game against Coventry. You can kind of argue how the Interscholastic League does the playoffs. Having 8 teams make the playoffs out of 12 or 14 Division II teams. It could be a little watered down. Coventry did have their running back did not play that game. He was suspended for a game, which was even more of an issue for them. But we came in and pretty much did whatever we wanted. 61-0. And Andy Gervasini, Westerly alum, and coached for Westerly for a little while as the offensive line coach, as their head coach. And bringing them to the playoffs, they missed the playoffs, I think, for a few years in a row. So getting to the playoffs is a big feat. And I've joked around on here before too, where it could be my mom out there coaching or my best friend, and I'm friends with friendly with Andy, and but it doesn't mean we're going easy on anybody, right? So our goal is to put up as many points as possible, with being obviously a little respectful for the team, obviously, that we're playing. But when you're scoring most of those points in the first half, we're just there playing, and we're putting subs in. We want our subs to play. We're not just going to put our subs in and run the clock out. We want to give them meaningful reps as well. But a great game, 61-0. There's really not much we could do wrong. I think the defense caused a bunch of turnovers as well. Because they did a little bit of mix of offensive stuff too. They did a little bit of kind of shotgun wing T stuff. They did a little bit of spread stuff. All right. So, but yeah, we'll move right on to the playoffs here. I think we're running low on time. But that West Warwick game, it was a semifinal again. And they beat us in the semifinals the year before. They beat us in the last game of the season the year before. There was a very big defensive adjustments for that game from the first game we played them. A little bit more of what we did at the end of the game, right? And then we did it the whole game.
Yeah, like I said, we brought a fifth lineman in. I think Dom Durfee came in and played the zero tech, which is right over the center. And then which also allowed us, we played cover 3 on the backside, so that allows us to bring that strong safety up to the line of scrimmage. And the way that we played it is if they wanted to down block, which Caleb and Calvin did a much better job of fighting that block. And then, of course, if they down blocked, when they're on if they go unblocked, spilling down the edge and really being physical. But if they did get down blocked, we sort of coached it where Ian, now the Wolf, or the strong safety, would essentially be that end and really sort of spill down that line. Because they were definitely throwing numbers to the run side. So, a totally different game. And, that was one of those great games to coach and be a part of, especially after 2 weeks earlier when it was so frustrating.
Yeah, and then, offensively, I remember we had that big screen pass where we fake our we ran a play where we pulled a guard and tackle a lot this year. It's a guard tackle counter, technically it's called. We're reading the defensive end. We started running a screen pass that looked exactly the same off of this, and I think we hit 3 touchdowns out of like the 5 times we ran it to Danny Cummings, and that was a big, because I mentioned from the earlier game when we played him, we had to figure out other ways to score than our regular drop back passing game because they did such a good job with their coverage, and that screen pass was huge, kind of got us going, and also with the Landon actually had a big day rushing. He had 82 yards rushing and a touchdown because we had a little tough time. Calvin had 59 yards on 16 carries. So West Warwick's a tough defense, but we ended up winning 34-6, and now it was definitely a complete game. Defense, offense, special teams all pitched into that one. And even though it was 34-6, it didn't feel like that much of a blowout until later in the game. But what a great feeling it must have been, for us as coaches, but as the players too, kind of. A little revenge on the team that beat us in the semifinals the year before and in the last game of the season. So. And then got us to the big game, the Super Bowl game that the Westerly hadn't won since 2001 against defending Super Bowl champion South Kingston. They're a wing T team offense that we ran here for years and years and years, and something we were very familiar with. And one thing we started in the similar defense that we did played against West Warwick. Dante Pino is their running back, and probably one of the best running backs in the division for sure. And he kind of had some big runs against us. We had trouble stopping them a little bit early on. They were getting some drives going. We did answer offensively early on with a nice quick RPO, quick pass to Danny there. But yeah, defensively against the wing T here, I know we made some big adjustments at halftime, and it really wasn't a huge adjustment because it pretty much just went back to the base defense, didn't we, Jordan? Like the defense we ran against West Warwick, Tristan was having a tough time as that lone linebacker stopping the off tackle because he pretty much had to cover from tackle to tackle. But if you want to talk about that game real quick, so.
Yeah, so this game, you talk about tendencies going to this game. I mean, we tried to do somewhat of a similar thing to what we did in West Warwick because we saw a lot of the same things happening. One thing that when you talk about tendencies, one thing that they did is they ran to that tight end side pretty heavily, tight end wing side. And so we were trying to we wanted to be in that 5 front, but we were trying to rotate our backers to the strength. And really be able to play 2 outside linebackers as opposed to in a more heavy set, as opposed to one of those being a safety. And so, we based on the direction that they had their strength or motion to, we would rotate our backers to, and they were motioning across. We were bringing our backers. They were down blocking on our 3-tech tackle, kicking our ends, and then subsequently down blocking on our ends and kicking that overhang, and we just weren't getting the force. I mean, they were doing a really good job of getting numbers to the edge. First 2 series of that game were really, really stressful, and I think we just sort of took a step back and started realized we weren't getting that force. So let's go back to base and see if we can really get more guys in the box with our base. Yeah. And so, just that adjustment where we were able to get that outside backer home already and be able to get downhill was really sort of the difference maker.
Kicking us out of here.
What's up, Calvin?
What's up, man?
How you doing?
Good.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things in that game was Damon was at center still, and they were actually disrupted with the snaps were definitely inaccurate here and there to say the least, and it was affecting Damon too, like mentally too. He was so upset, because the type of kid he is, he doesn't want to put the team in any type of danger. So offensively, real quick before we get to the offensive line moves. The early on, at least we kept coming back. Their offense was moving the ball, and we kept kind of putting some pressure on them by coming back as well. But things got definitely a little tight there for a little while because of Landon kind of got tackled on a long run where he landed on his shoulder, And we weren't sure if he was going to be able to come back in the game. And I remember at halftime, him warming up, and he's really kind of wincing in pain a little bit. And we had to go with Caleb to start the second half, and right off the bat, I think it was the second or third play that we scored on a kind of a scramble drill there to Danny, and it definitely gave the team confidence in case Landon wasn't able to come back. Gave the team a little confidence that we can still win this game. But Landon, he knew how important he was, and he came back from that injury, and late in the game, we were up by 3 or 4 points, and we're inside the red zone, and we make a beautiful throw against man coverage in the corner of the end zone to Caleb that put us up by 9 or 10, 2 scores, and that's when it really felt like, all right, I think I felt more excitement there than when the time ran out. Because at that point, that's when we started to feel like we're going to probably win this game. And obviously with those 2 pick sixes, to really close this thing out, really made things, more calm at the end there than it would have been in a close game. So that's why the excitement for me as a coach all came on that touchdown pass a little more than when the time ran out. But we might not have gotten there without the offensive line play with putting Alex in there at center. It was a big decision that we made.
Yeah, going for Alex started the second game of the season, and he did a good job. A couple of other moments we played him where he physically got dominated. So it was a touch and go. Is it time? Is it not time? And by this time, both Tristan and Colby Champlin had stepped up to where Tristan was an everyday starter after losing Jack, after losing Marcus. We had this setup, and that was a lot for Tristan. It's asking him to play both sides of the ball every play. And, he had nothing. This is a 3-month tutorial for him. But it got to the point where, we were struggling with the snaps. And that's one thing with this. When you're in shotgun, I'd rather have a mediocre blocker and an accurate snap. I mean, Zach Moore and 6 years ago won the starting job as a freshman because he was
so
flawless with the snaps. But these guys are like, hey, I think it's time to go Alex. I think it's time to go Alex. And I took what they said. We moved Damon over. We gave Tristan a break. Alex went in, and they weren't a giant defensive line up front. So Alex's technique was great. Gave him time, and that's all I'm asking these guys to do with Landon is give him time.
And there was a couple plays there where Alex definitely got manhandled a little bit. I think it was 64 was our nose guard. He was a great player. He got all division. I know he did because I was at the meeting. But the snaps were accurate, and Landon gets rid of the ball so quick. He doesn't really hold on to the ball. Where even if he gets manhandled here and there on a pass play, the ball should be off. The running game wasn't the greatest, I would say, throughout the whole game. We had trouble running. But later in the game, offensively, what we did a little more was a little more quick passes. Obviously, Landon couldn't throw the ball deep that much, and even though that was that touchdown pass, he probably threw about 25 yards to the corner of the end zone from the 12. But we were trying to keep it short because we knew we probably, with the slight shoulder problem there, that we had to keep it short. And they started to send their defensive ends to cover the hitches to try to kind of mess us up a little bit. But we stuck it in there, like some really close plays that were almost knocked down. But we did just enough, and then with Ian Morissette and Dan Cummings, getting those pick sixes at the end really kind of solidified for us. And first championships 2001, all the work the coaches put in, all the work the players put in, all came to fruition. And one of the things before the game, like that, it was very Westerly-like, was because of the way the locker room was. It's like right at the gate where the players are in the little locker room underneath the bleachers. We're waiting for this to for our time to go on the field, because we already warmed up and we're just waiting in there to kind of take the field. And all the fans are like walking through the gate, and it's kind of like, it was a little weird because it's almost like we were like greeting them. So all the people, like all the coaches, were all kind of from Westerly. Everybody knows us. They're all saying hi, good luck, and it kind of was like a little like seeing your friends off before something was going on, like a big game or something like that, which obviously it was. But yeah, it was nice seeing all the fans come in there, even though it was a little strange kind of being at the gate. But it was nice seeing all the past players, parents, fans, people that don't have kids anymore, Westerly really came to that game and had so many fans there, and it was pretty cool.
All those 85 guys.
Yeah, and the 85 team, the 1985 team, had their 30-year reunion. Actually, was it 40-year? 40-year reunion. And some of them were there. Some of them had a group text going on with all the updates and everything. So we had a lot of people on our side, and it was such a great season. And capped off with the Thanksgiving Day win on 3 days rest, pretty much. We barely practiced. But with the 10 seniors we had, it was our last game, and we were trying to get healthy and just put a great Thanksgiving Day game together. It was a little close there for a couple minutes, but it was a great way to end our season, the season that we had, and very memorable one. So if you want
Absolutely. No, it was just exciting to watch these guys cap that. The seniors go 4-0 on Thanksgiving.
Next year we're going to take the lead.
Tied up the all-time series as an ex-player who didn't contribute much to that success. It's nice that I've got 3 boys that so far, with 1 more year to go, are undefeated on Thanksgiving. So let's get 1 more. A lot of promising coming back. Like I said, Alex is back. Marcus, I hope to recover. Ryder, Ian, a lot.
Evan Baxter.
A lot more going into this season. This past season, we had a lot of holes to fill and a lot of question marks. And some of them weren't even on the team. Colby, Tristan, Alex, I didn't even know who they were as far as football players, and they were starting at the end of the season. This year, we got a lot more names written in pen than we do in pencil. So.
Yeah. Same situation. Stay healthy, and if we do have a couple injuries, we've got to overcome them. And, I think we have a great chance at, getting back to the Super Bowl next year, but it's one game at a time. Our schedule is extremely difficult, but I think it's going to help us in the end, just like it did this year. We got a game in New Hampshire against Bishop Girton, one of the better teams in New Hampshire. We're playing Situate at home, which is going to be a great matchup. 2 state champions playing each other. What a way to open up a season. But yeah, Jordan, real quick before we go, if you want your last words on the season.
No, this was a really special season. I mean, I knew there were some points in the season where I know we were banging our heads against the wall, sort of keeping that positivity, but still down at the same time with all the injuries. And I think that what. With such a small roster and what we went through and losing so many players, to come out the other side was, I'll be honest, there were points throughout the season where I questioned, where this was going to end up. And coming into the season, I had really, really great hope and feeling about this team. And, the fact that we were able to still pull it out with losing so many guys and, was sort of extra special. So,
yeah, a lot of people, I think, a lot of people in the media, I think, like the Providence Journal and some others, who kind of wrote us off after the West Warwick last game of the season loss. But we played some of our best football after that game, which is what good teams do, what championship teams do, and overcoming those injuries is a huge. It shows how good our staff is, and how good we are with a small roster. Because everywhere we go to all these clinics in the off season, and a lot of these coaches have like 80, 90 man rosters, and we're doing what they're doing with 40 men. You know what I mean? So just being able to be competitive with a small roster against some of the state's best, or even Massachusetts' best, is a testament to the players and their dedication, and the coaches getting the best guys in the right position. Because when you have a small roster, the whole thing is putting guys in the right spots, and I think we do a great job at playing our best players and putting them where they are. Because I guess it's not a given on some teams. Some coaches don't play the right players, and that's where you get players are unhappy thinking they should be playing. But if you're doing everything right and the players are in there, and with our small roster, we're pretty much playing almost everybody on special teams or at some point. So everybody's happy.
The embracement of the conditioning.
Yeah.
I mean, like Jordan said, it's essentially a 40-man roster, but at the end, it's like 15 kids playing 22 spots.
Yeah, and
So-
then and everyone's got to step right up for next year. You know, I mean, all the freshmen. You know, the big thing with some of these guys that were like fringe players that got in sometimes in varsity games and played a lot of JV, like they need to prepare in the offseason as if they're a starter because some of them are now. You know, I mean, the person ahead of them was a senior and they graduated. Right, you need to prepare as if you're a starter, and the weight room is so important. You know, Mike Contrary, you know, takes the lead on that. And you know, he does a great job with our strength and conditioning program. And you know, in the off season, that's the most important thing. And you know, it's not just what you do on the field in October, November. You know what I mean? It's a full year in what you're doing right now. And you know, our guys are you know, bought into that, and you know, we're just preparing for next year and we're ready to go. So.
Congratulations to Caleb, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
I guess we're all set here. See you, Calvin. I got to open the weight room for your son in a minute here. To get it done early. So, all right, Ben, you can take us away here if you're listening. Oh boy.
Thanks, guys. Great show today.
Yeah, thank you, Jordan.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jordan.